Hey everyone, and I'm here with our special guest, Bob Brumfield, a leading estate planning attorney and elder law expert based out of Bakersfield, who helps business owners and hardworking Americans protect their family and financial affairs from unexpected life events. And today, we're talking about why most estate plans become out of date, leaving many families financially, but more importantly, emotionally exposed when they thought everything was safely taken care of, and what you can do to avoid this happening. Good to have you on, Bob.
Thanks, Grant. Great to be here.
Now, before we get started, if you've not got a plan, or you think your current plan needs a review, or even if you need some questions answered right now, if you just go to Protect My Money in BFL.com, that's Protect My Money in BFL.com, you'll get a free assessment, some immediate next steps, and I think hopefully some peace of mind. Now, to kick off, Bob, let's talk about this thing that you see leaving families really exposed when they thought setting up their plan was really just enough. And you said to me before the show, when it comes to planning, people tend to see it as a one-time event, but you're sort of going to suggest to our listeners today that's not really the case, yeah?
No, that's really not true. People do see it as a one-time event. You're right. And the problem is, of course, that life throws us curveballs. There are lots of changes that happen in life, and those are all great times to look at your estate plan. They could be the day after you sign your estate plan, or they could be years down the road. But I think it's important to keep your eye on these life changes because they do impact your estate plan.
Yeah, and I think the reality is, it's obviously great to have an estate plan, and for everyone listening that's got one, the caveat to everything is it's not really anyone's fault because you can only plan for what you've got in your life at the time, right?
Oh, absolutely. If you could predict the future, things would be easy, but you can't. And what you have right now is what you plan for.
Yeah, exactly. So, the kind of trigger events you're seeing are things like, what would you say is a trigger event to review the plan? Just give us some examples, really.
Well, with obviously divorces are a very high one. And of course, the divorce rate, I'm sure, is somewhere around 50%. It has been for a long time. Or children being born, your grandchildren being born. And that can cause reasons for specific gifts. Of course, when the first spouse passes away in the situation of a married couple, for the most part, the trusts that we put together allow the surviving spouse to make whatever changes he or she thinks is appropriate. And that's also, a sad time, certainly. But it's also a time that you need to look and assess how you're going to move forward personally as well. Those are some very common events.
And also one that I think some people miss is actually children in the bloodline getting married, and then potentially, obviously, there could be a divorce on the cards in a few years if you just do the numbers on it, right?
Oh, sure. And, a lot of people want to make sure that whatever they're passing down stays in bloodlines. And that makes sense. That certainly makes sense. You don't want the ex-spouse who's not part of the bloodline maybe getting a hold of some of the assets. But, then again, sometimes I ran across a situation recently where one of the spouses who was not in the bloodlines, the people who set the trust up wanted to make sure, in this case, it was a she, make sure that she actually inherited something because they really liked her a lot. So, everybody's life is different and everybody's relationships are different, but that's what you need to plan for.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, in terms of timing, if you were just going to set a time period to relook at a plan, what sort of time period would you recommend to our listeners?
Well, I'd say generally it seems like every 3 to 5 years, there is something that they want to change.
Or has happened?
Something's happened, and any of those events and other events have happened. It could be illness is another event that could happen to one of the spouses, or there could be a special needs grandchild or child situation that comes along. But it does seem like every 3, 4, or 5 years, there's something significant that the people who set up the trust need altered or reviewed.
Yeah. So to get into, like, you talked to me about, there's 3 areas of change, generally 3 areas of change, and you boil that down into the law, you boil that down into family, and you boil that down into money. So let's talk about each one of those so our listeners can get their heads around why each one of those would be important to relook every sort of 3 to 5 years. If we take the law, for example.
Right. Well, there haven't been too many changes in the law in recent years, but one of the biggest ones is the issue of estate taxes. That's one of the biggest. And right now, in the United States at least, and covers every state, it's a federal law. But for a married couple, the exemption from estate taxes is $22 million or $11 million per spouse. So there's not a lot of estate tax concerns, obviously, but people need to understand that those laws have changed at least 20 times in the history of our country. And so you just simply do the math and you can figure, well, that means they change it about every 12 years. And that's true. Just 20 years ago, the estate tax exemption was about $600,000. So you can certainly see that can be a big issue.
Why is that an issue for an estate plan that's got that built in? Because you've got to undo it, or?
Well, there are other planning mechanisms you can use. And if you get to an estate at now at the $22 million level, there's a lot of things you can do to minimize the taxes. And becomes a somewhat complicated discussion, usually involving your CPA, of course, the estate planning lawyer, perhaps your insurance or person or financial planner as well, because there are things you can do to minimize that tax issue. And that's true whether it's $600,000 or $22 million. And in California, or really many states, if you have a house, you've got a $600,000 estate. So if you go back to 20 years ago, and of course, with the way our government loves to spend money, you sort of think one day they're going to roll back the estate tax exemption and maybe try to grab a little bit of extra money. But
so that could change again. Yeah, you're right.
All it takes is Congress passing a law and the president signing it. That's all it takes.
But also things like you mentioned to me, the new HIPAA laws and stuff like that may not be taken care of in an older plan.
Well, right. And this is not too long ago, say in the last 15 years, the HIPAA laws or the privacy laws changed dramatically. And I still see a lot of people coming in having their estate plans reviewed. And you realize that their healthcare directive does not have a HIPAA waiver, meaning the person that you want to make healthcare decisions for you does not have a right to your private healthcare information. And if that waiver is not there, a hospital or a doctor could say, sorry, I can't share that information with you because the privacy laws prohibit it. And so a lot of times people come in, you have an old estate plan, and you say, okay, your trust may be fine, or this other aspect may be fine, but you better get this healthcare directive updated because it doesn't do what you think it does.
Yeah. So when people create a plan, for example, things might be taken care of when they're passing assets down. But if someone's got to go to a nursing home and they've not catered for that, that's another huge issue, isn't it?
Well, sure. And nursing home, of course, expenses are super high. And you have to make sure that your beneficiaries or your successor trustees or the person who manages your financial affairs all is given the necessary authority to act on your behalf. And nursing home is a real, gosh, like I know my mother-in-law had a severe stroke about 3 years ago, and she's doing great now, which is good. She's only in assisted living, which is quite a comeback. But we had to scurry around, quite honestly, and set my spouse up, who is, of course, her daughter, to have powers of attorney in place and to make sure everything was covered. So she would have a right to walk into the nursing home and have all the authority that she needs to help her mom.
And rather than talk about authority, let's also talk about the cost of it and how someone's assets could get wiped out when really they could have been protected if they'd have updated their plan in time.
Sure. And actually, a recent law in California protects your assets from recovery if you receive state benefits. And that was quite a change, actually. So in other words, if you receive here, it'd be Medi-Cal benefits to pay for nursing home care, if you have your assets in a trust, the state can't come back against the trust to recover what the state paid out when that person passes away. And this is, a little bit beyond what we're talking about. But I would encourage everyone who is young enough to get long-term care insurance. I think that's really important with the rising cost of care. As of right now, for example, I go back to my mother-in-law's example. Her assisted living expense is right about $4,300. And then the drug part, I guess, is Medicare B.
What's that per month, Bob? Or
Yeah, per month.
Wow. Yeah.
Then the prescription bill runs between $150 to $300 a month, depending on the month. So, I mean, gosh, long-term care insurance for just a few $100s a month could cover that whole $4,000 plus bill for a number of years.
I mean, sometimes it's a toss-up between whether you want to pay the premiums for a period, maybe 20, 30 years, or is it more cost-effective to have an estate plan built that may be a bigger lump sum, but will protect those assets as well. So I think that's why you need to speak to an attorney, isn't it?
You do, but and also need to tie into you're a good insurance person as well on that, and that's something that your estate planning attorney, or in this case me, I'm the one talking, can certainly help you get situated with.
Sure. There's a group that might be listening to this right now that you've seen greatly affected from lack of planning or just lack of updating their plan. And that's the business owner community, who suffer terribly from this because they're just so busy. And we were talking about your plan, weren't we? And
yeah, my plan's about 24 years old right now. And the amendments are sitting in my office to get it updated, and I do need to finish that up. And that's one of my.
Well, come on, get on with it. What are you doing?
I don't know. I'm busy, just like a business person.
Yeah, exactly right.
And that's what happens. And it's certainly better than not having one completely, even if it's old. But it definitely needs to be updated, because our son we have one child, a son, and he was 5 at the time, 5 or 6, and now he's going to be 29 in about 2 months. So I think it's about time to update it, I would say. And I'll do my best to follow my own advice.
So for all our listeners, Bob is talking from experience on this episode, where he understands completely that trying to keep stuff up to date isn't as easy as we might make out. So I think for everyone listening, the stuff that we've been covering is very powerful. And if you've liked the advice today and you really would like some questions answered, if you go to protectmymoneyinbfl.com, that's protectmymoneyinbfl.com, you'll get a free assessment, you'll get some questions answered, and hopefully some immediate next steps to make you feel a whole lot better. Bob, I just want to say thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome, Grant. It's always good chatting with you.
Yeah, all right. And we'll catch up soon.
Sounds great.
All right. Great stuff. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Protect Your Family and Money Show. If you'd like to contact our featured guest, just go to www.protectmymoneyinbfl.com and you'll be able to get a free assessment, some immediate next steps, and above all, peace of mind. Oh, and if you know someone that needs help, then just tell them to get in touch. The Protect Your Family and Money Show, helping hardworking Americans keep their family and money safe. The views expressed by the participants are their own and are not endorsed by the show. Nothing said in this podcast is legal advice for you.